In this video, we're going to be installing a front strut in this 2015 Hyundai Sonata. With a 21mm socket, we're going to go ahead and take our tire off. The first step we're going to do to remove our strut is we're going to remove our upper sway bar link mount. It's going to be a 19mm nut with an 8mm stud in the center. We're going to need to put a socket on the center to stop it from spinning. And we're going to use a wrench on the nut to back that nut off. All right, now we can push back our link and move this out of the way. If you really need to, you can drop it down as far as you can get it. I think over here should be far enough out of the way. Now on the other side, the rear side of our strut, we have our speed sensor wire and our brake hose / speed sensor bracket. They're both bolted to our strut, so we need to remove those both. Speed sensor top bolt here is going to be a 12mm. And our bottom brake hose speed sensor bracket here is going to be also a 12mm. So now, in our wheel well connecting our strut to the knuckle, we have two large bolts here. On the rearward side, on the bolt side, it's going to be a 19. On the nut side, the forward side, it's going to be a 24. So we're going to use 19 on an impact and a 24mm wrench. Now we have one bolt halfway out. We just go ahead and take that bolt right out. And our bottom bolt is now holding the weight of the knuckle and the strut. So it's going to be a little more difficult if you did this vice versa. One of them is going to take the weight. So we're going to use a hammer and just gently tap that bolt. You can take it all the way out now. Your knuckle may swing forward a little bit. What we're going to do is just leave that bolt in there about halfway. Now we've moved to the top of the vehicle. We have 3 nuts left holding our strut in place. They are going to be 14mm. We're going to go and take those out now. One of the reasons we left one of the big bolts down the bottom holding the strut to the knuckle is when we undo these and remove them, the strut won't fall straight down doing any damage. So now we can easily take these nuts right off. Okay, now back down to our strut. We have one bolt holding our strut still in place. At this point, your front suspension is free, okay? Once we remove this bolt, we're gonna remove our strut. While doing that, be very careful not to do any damage to your brake hose here. More than likely, our strut will come out through here. Just take your time, work it out slowly. Don't do any damage to your axle boot here. When you remove this bolt, go ahead and put one hand on your strut so it doesn't fall. And you're going to work your strut off of the knuckle and out of the vehicle. So now we have our new strut and our old strut. We're going to get new nuts on the top to use, and we're going to have to reuse the cap from our old strut. It's just going to be pop right off, pop right on. If you really wanted to, you could do this after the strut's in the vehicle. We're just going to do it now, so that way we don't forget. Now we can take our old one, set it aside, remove our new nuts, and we're actually going to place these up in the engine bay so they're there for us when we get up top. Okay, so our first thing we're going to do is put our 3 nuts on loosely just to hold it in place. We're going to take our strut and we're going to feed it in through the fender well. I'm going to line up our top 3 bolts. All I'm doing down below is just holding it up with the coil spring. Once you get these 2 on, you can release the coil spring. Okay, now that these are snugged up, we can go down and work in the wheel well. Okay, so now we're in the wheel well. You can see our knuckle has angled itself outward and our strut is pretty much in position. At this point, if we needed to, we could spin our strut, right? So we're going to get our knuckle and strut lined up the best we can. We may have to, and we're going to, have to pull our whole knuckle up into position to meet our strut. So we're going to grab one of our bolts, pull our knuckle up, and put one of our bolts through. Do the same thing on the bottom. While we're here, we can thread on our nuts. Okay, so now that our strut is pretty well centered and it's in place, it's not going to twist, move up or down much more, we can put our brackets on. If you'll notice on the bottom of your brackets, you have little locating tabs. We're going to locate those tabs and thread our bolts in to start by hand. All right, we've got the top one started. Go down to the bottom one. Again, these are 12 millimeter. We'll just tighten these up. All right, and if we go to put our sway bar link back into place, you'll notice that we're a little low on the strut side. Ideally, what you want to do is center your ball joint on your sway bar link. That way it's in the center of its travel, and you'll still notice that we're a little low. We also have these 2 nuts here that we need to tighten down. So what we're going to do is put our suspension under load, simulating the vehicle settling on that strut, and we'll tighten these down. Then we'll finish it off by going up top, tightening those down as well. All right, before we put a little load on this suspension, we're just going to take out some of the thread here, get these close to being ready, to being torqued. Same thing on the bottom. Now to simulate a load on our vehicle, on our suspension, we're going to use a pole jack because we're on a lift. So we're going to raise the pole jack to simulate our tire and the weight of the vehicle being on the suspension. While we do this, we're going to keep an eye up top to see if our sway bar link will meet where it needs to be, which is right about there. Okay. So once the vehicle is under load, we can now torque down our strut bolts. So now that we've simulated a load on the suspension, we're going to torque down our 2 strut bolts. We're going to start at the bottom and torque them down to 150 foot-pounds. All right, we'll do the same thing on the top. Okay, now we can take our sway bar link, put it into our strut bracket, and put the nut back on. All right, we're going to snug this bolt up, and then we're going to torque it down. Okay. And this nut here is going to get torqued down to 75 foot-pounds. If you don't have the right tool to hold the center still while you spin this nut, what you can also do is get a pair of locking pliers on the back metal flange and torque it down. So now that we've torqued our strut to the knuckle down, we can release pressure on our suspension. All right, now we have everything torqued up down here. What we're going to do is put our tire on so we can lower the vehicle, putting load on our suspension upwards so we can go up top and torque down those 3 bolts. And then when we're finished, we'll lower our vehicle one last time if we need to, if it's already on the ground. Once we're done, we'll torque our lug nuts down. So now we're up top in the vehicle. What we've done is put the tire on the suspension and lowered the vehicle onto the suspension. That way, we're going to torque these down under weight. We're going to torque these 3 bolts down to 45 foot-pounds, and these are going to be 15 millimeters. So now that we're on the ground, the tire can't spin, we're going to torque down our lug nuts to 75 foot-pounds. We're going to do that in a crisscross pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.